Should we get into the Scarlet Pimpernel? This is chapter 10. So we had in the previous chapter, Chauvelin, he came and captured Sir Andrew and Sir Anthony. And he took a note that shows that Armand Saint-Just is acting as a double agent, essentially. He's pretending to be for the revolution, the Republic of France, but he is working for the British and trying to suppress the revolution. Like the French Revolution and its middle-class uprising. Exactly. And how when there is this endless greed, people can only be under those circumstances for so long before they start to exact the same kind of injustice they felt on their oppressors. Like, what else can you expect when people are living that way for so long? Okay. This is chapter 10, In the Opera Box. It was one of the gala nights at Covent Garden Theatre, the first of the autumn season in this memorable year of grace, 1792. The house was packed, both in the smart orchestra boxes and the pit, as well as in the more plebeian balconies and galleries above. Plebeian. Hi. Speaking of class, we have a footnote here. Gluck's Orpheus, Orfeo et Eurydice, an opera by the German composer Christoph Gluck. I don't know if I'm saying that right. With a libretto by Raniero Calzabigi, premiered in 1762 in Vienna, a French adaptation of Gluck's opera Orphée et Eurydice, for which Pierre-Louis Moline translated Calzabigi's libretto, was first performed at the Paris Opera in 1772. Okay. Gluck's Orpheus made a strong appeal to the more intellectual portions of the house, whilst the fashionable women, the gaily dressed and brilliant throng spoke to the eye of those who cared but little for this latest importation from Germany. Selina Storace had been duly applauded after her grand aria by her numerous admirers. Benjamin Incledon, yeah, I think that's right, the acknowledged favorite of the ladies, had received special gracious recognition from the royal box. And now the curtain came down after the glorious finale to the second act, and the audience, which had hung spellbound on the magic strains of the great maestro, seemed collectively to breathe a long sigh of satisfaction, previous to letting loose its hundreds of waggish and frivolous tongues. In the smart orchestra boxes, many well-known faces were to be seen. Mr. Pitt, overweighted with cares of state, was finding brief relaxation in tonight's musical treat. The Prince of Wales, jovial, rotund, somewhat coarse and commonplace in appearance, moved about from box to box, spending brief quarters of an hour with these of his more intimate friends. In Lord Grenville's box, too, a curious, interesting personality attracted everyone's attention. A thin, small figure with shrewd, sarcastic face and deep-set eyes, attentive to the music, keenly critical of the audience, dressed in immaculate black, with dark hair free from any powder. Lord Grenville, Foreign Secretary of State, paid him marked, though frigid, deference. Here and there, dotted about among distinctly English types of beauty, that's a funny phrase. One or two foreign faces stood out in marked contrast. The haughty aristocratic cast of countenance of the many French royalist émigrés who, persecuted by the relentless revolutionary faction of their country, had found a peaceful refuge in England. Yeah, they were able to escape. and be at peace and still enjoy the benefits of class. On these faces, sorrow and care were deeply writ. Oh, so sad. The women especially paid but little heed, either to the music or to the brilliant audience. No doubt their thoughts were far away, with husband, brother, son. Maybe still in peril or lately succumbed to a cruel fate. Okay, what about, like, daughters and shit? Among these I guess I shouldn't say shit. Female people, femme people. Among these, the Comtesse de Tournay de Basserive, but lately arrived from France, was a most conspicuous figure, dressed in deep, heavy black silk, with only a white lace kerchief to relieve the aspect of mourning about her person. She sat beside Lady Portarles, who was vainly trying by witty sallies and somewhat broad jokes to bring a smile to the Comtesse's sad mouth. Behind her sat little Suzanne and the Vicomte, both silent and somewhat shy among so many strangers. Suzanne's eyes seemed wistful when she first entered the crowded house. She had looked eagerly all around, scanned every face, scrutinized every box. She's trying to look for Sir Andrew, I'm guessing. Hi, Teeny. Come here. I can see her outside. She's meowing. Oh, nope. She turned around. Evidently, the one face she wished to see was not there, for she settled herself quietly behind her mother, listened apathetically to the music, and took no further interest in the audience itself. "Ah, Lord Grenville," said Lady Portarles, as following a discreet knock, the clever, interested head of the Secretary of State appeared in the doorway of the box. "You could not arrive more apropos. Here is Madame la Comtesse de Tournay, positively dying to hear the latest news from France." The distinguished diplomatist had come forward and was shaking hands with the ladies.
"Alas," he said sadly, "it is of the very worst. The massacres continue. Paris literally reeks with blood, and the guillotine claims 100 victims a day."
Oh, so sad. Pale and tearful, the Comtesse was leaning back in her chair, listening horror-struck to this brief and graphic account of what went on in her own misguided country. Misguided? I don't think so.
"Oh, monsieur,"
her catchphrase, apparently. She said in broken English,
"it is dreadful to hear all that, and my poor husband is still in that awful country. It is terrible for me to be sitting here in a theatre all safe and in peace, whilst he is in such peril."
"Lord, madam," said honest, bluff Lady Portarles, "your sitting in a convent won't make your husband safe, and you have your children to consider. They are too young to be dosed with anxiety and premature mourning." The Comtesse smiled through her tears at the vehemence of her friend. Lady Portarles, whose voice and manner would not have misfitted a jockey, had a heart of gold, and hid the most genuine sympathy and most gentle kindness. "Hi. Hi, Beanie." And the most gentle kindness beneath the somewhat coarse manners affected by some ladies at the time.
"Besides which, madam," added Lord Grenville, "did you not tell me yesterday that the League of the Scarlet Pimpernel had pledged their honor to bring Monsieur le Comte safely across the Channel?"
"Ah, yes," replied the Comtesse, "and that is my only hope. I saw Lord Hastings yesterday. He assured me again."
"Then I'm sure you need have no fear. What the League have sworn they will surely accomplish."
"Ah," added the old diplomatist with a sigh,
"if I were but a few years younger."
"Yes? Hi. Come here." We'll see if she hops up here.
"La, man,
interrupted honest Lady Portarles.
"You're still young enough to turn your back on that French scarecrow that sits enthroned in your box tonight." "I wish I could, but your ladyship must remember that in serving our country we must put prejudice aside. Monsieur Chauvelin is the accredited agent of his government."
"Hi, Buck." "Welcome, welcome."
"Odds fish, man," she retorted. "You don't call those bloodthirsty ruffians over there a government, do you?"
"Well, yes."
"It has not been thought advisable, as yet," said the minister guardedly, "for England to break off diplomatic relations with France, and we cannot therefore refuse to receive any courtesy the agent she wishes to send us." "Diplomatic relations be demned, my lord! That sly little fox over there is nothing but a spy, I'll warrant, and you'll find, and I'm much mistaken, that he'll concern himself with little with such diplomacy, beyond trying to do mischief to royalist refugees, to our heroic Scarlet Pimpernel, and to the members of that brave little league." "I am sure," said the Comtesse.
"Hi, Tiny." Pursing her thin lips,
"that if this Chauvelin wishes to do us mischief, he will find a faithful ally and Lady Blakeney." "Bless the woman!" ejaculated Lady Portarles. "Did ever anyone see such perversity? My Lord Grenville, you have the gift of the gab. Will you please explain to Madame la Comtesse that she is acting like a fool? In your position here in England, Madame," she added, turning a wrathful and resolute face towards the Comtesse, so she's mad that the Comtesse is speaking ill of Marguerite. "You cannot afford to put on the hoity-toity airs you French aristocrats are so fond of. Lady Blakeney may or may not be in sympathy with those ruffians in France. She may or may not have had anything to do with the arrest and condemnation of Saint Cyr, or whatever the man's name is, but she is the leader of fashion in this country." She's like, I don't care what she has done. She is the most fashionable, and we must give her respect. "Sir Percy Blakeney has more money than any half-dozen other men put together. He is hand and glove with royalty, and your trying to snub Lady Blakeney will not harm her, but will make you look a fool. Isn't that so, my lord?" So, as we were reading with Rousseau, how he was talking about money being the main thing that people are able to acquire power and influence and merit in society, that this is true here, where Lady Portarles is essentially saying that it doesn't matter what their political views are. He has the most money, and they're fashionable because he has the most money, so we need to respect them. But what Lord Grenville thought of this matter, or to what reflections this homely tirade of Lady Portarles led the Comtesse de Tournay, remained unspoken, for the curtain had just risen on the third act of Orpheus, and admonishments to silence came from every part of the house. Lord Grenville took a hasty farewell of the ladies, and slipped back into his box, where Monsieur Chauvelin had sat all through this entr'acte, with his eternal snuff-box in hand, and with his keen, pale eyes intently fixed upon a box opposite him, where, with much frou-frou of silken skirts, much laughter, and general stir of curiosity amongst the audience, Marguerite Blakeney had just entered, accompanied by her husband, and looking divinely pretty beneath the wealth of her golden reddish curls, slightly besprinkled with powder, and tied back at the nape of her graceful neck with a gigantic black bow. Always dressed in the very latest vagary of fashion, Marguerite alone among the ladies that night had discarded the crossover fichu and broad-lapelled overdress, which had been in fashion for the last 2 or 3 years. She wore the short-waisted, classical-shaped gown, which so soon was to become the approved mode in every country in Europe. It suited her graceful, regal figure to perfection, composed as it was of shimmering stuff, which seemed a mass of rich gold embroidery. So, again, showing that, she is the one starting these fashions. Or
she picks it up from other places and has the means to acquire them and wear them in society. As she entered, she leant for a moment out of the box, taking stock of all those present whom she knew. Many bowed to her as she did so, and from the royal box there came also a quick and gracious salute. I'm just seeing how long this is. Oh, this is a longer chapter than what we normally have. I can turn this page to figure it out. Okay. I'm going to read just a couple more pages. Chauvelin watched her intently all through the commencement of the third act, as she sat enthralled with the music, her exquisite little hand toying with a small, jeweled fan. Cute. Her regal head, her throat, arms, and neck covered with magnificent diamonds, oh boy, and rare gems, the gift of the adoring husband who sprawled leisurely by her side, which these things were gotten by colonial extraction and enslaving people. Marguerite was passionately fond of music. Orpheus charmed her tonight. The very joy of living was writ plainly upon the sweet young face. It sparkled out of the merry blue eyes, and lit up the smile that lurked around the lips. She was, after all, but 25, in the heyday of youth, the darling of a brilliant throng, adored, feted, petted, cherished. 2 days ago, the Daydream had returned from Calais, bringing her news that her idolized brother had safely landed, that he thought of her and would be prudent for her sake. What wonder for the moment, in listening to Gluck's impassioned strains, that she forgot her disillusionments, forgot her vanished love dreams, forgot even the lazy, good-humored non-entity who had made up for his lack of spiritual attainments by lavishing worldly advantages upon her. She's calling her husband, Sir Percy, a non-entity. That is very rude, but also I don't care because he is extremely classist. He had stayed beside her in the box just as long as convention demanded, making way for His Royal Highness and for the host of admirers who in a continued procession came to pay homage to the Queen of Fashion. Sir Percy had strolled away to talk more to congenial friends, probably. Marguerite did not even wonder whither he had gone. She cared so little. She had had a little court round her, composed of the jeunesse dorée, gilded, that is, privileged youth, of London, and had just dismissed them all, wishing to be alone with Gluck for a while. A discreet knock at the door roused her from her enjoyment. "Come in," she said with some impatience, without turning to look at the intruder. Chauvelin, waiting for his opportunity, noted she was alone, and now, without pausing for that impatient "come in," he quietly slipped into the box, and the next moment was standing behind Marguerite's chair. "A word with you, citoyenne," he said quietly. Marguerite turned quickly in alarm, which was not altogether feigned. "Lord, man, you frightened me," she said with a forced little laugh. "Your presence is entirely inopportune. I want to listen to Gluck, and have no mind for talking." "But this is my only opportunity," he said as quietly, and without waiting for permission. He drew a chair close behind her, so close that he could whisper in her ear without disturbing the audience, and without being seen in the dark background of the box. "This is my only opportunity," he repeated, as she vouchsafed him no reply. "Lady Blakeney is always so surrounded, so feted by her court, that a mere old friend has but very little chance." "Faith, man," she said impatiently, "you must seek for another opportunity, then. I am going to Lord Grenville's ball tonight, after the opera. So are you, probably. I'll give you 5 minutes, then." 3 minutes in the privacy of this box are quite sufficient for me," he rejoined placidly, "and I think that you will be wise to listen to me, citoyen Saint-Just." Marguerite instinctively shivered. Chauvelin had not raised his voice above a whisper. He was now quietly taking a pinch of snuff. Yet there was something in his attitude, something in those pale, foxy eyes, ooh, foxy, which seemed to freeze the blood in her veins, as would the sight of some deadly, hitherto unguessed peril. Also, foxy eyes, like it's saying that he's like being cunning and he's devious, but he actually is like trying to work for a liberated France. But this idea of having like fox-like eyes as well is fairly racist because especially at the time of this Orientalism of viewing people who are Asian with having fox-like eyes and using it as a way to make him look like he is a villain. In those pale, foxy eyes, which seemed to freeze the blood in her veins, as would the sight of some deadly, hitherto unguessed peril.
"Is that a threat, citoyen?"
she asked at last.
"Nay, fair lady," he said gallantly, "only an arrow shot into the air."
He paused a moment, like a cat which sees a mouse running heedlessly by, ready to spring, yet waiting with that feline sense of enjoyment, of mischief about to be done. Then he said quietly,
"Your brother Saint-Just is in peril."
Not a muscle moved in the beautiful face before him. He could only see it in profile, for Marguerite seemed to be watching the stage intently, but Chauvelin had a keen observer. He was a keen observer. Whoops. He noticed the sudden rigidity of the eyes, the hardening of the mouth, the sharp, almost paralyzed tension of the beautiful, graceful figure.
"Lud, then," she said with affected merriment, "since 'tis one of your imaginary plots, you'd best go back to your own seat and leave me to enjoy the music."
And with her hand, she began to beat time nervously against the cushion of the box. Selina Storace was singing the Che Faro to an audience and hung spellbound upon the prima donna's lips. Chauvelin did not move from his seat. He quietly watched that tiny, nervous hand, the only indication that his shaft had indeed struck home. Okay, I think that's where I'm going to have to leave it. But here's another little illustration of Marguerite and Chauvelin at the opera. Him being looked at as this evil villain when he is actually trying to have more dignity and equality for all of the people in France. Okay. That's going to be it for me today. But tomorrow, I want to go over Banned Book Club. I forgot to do that today. Whoops. Reading The Giver, chapters 18 and 19. And we're going to talk about the Congo. But then also, Tan, I want to go over those articles you sent. I'm very excited because they're excellent. Like, this is incredible to get people who are interested in subject matter like this. So thank you. Thank you for being here and for participating. It was good chatting with you. I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, wherever you are. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.